Good evening, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here with such an eminent group of panelists sitting with me. And I think the topic that we are discussing today about consumer experience optimization is one of the most key challenges we as marketers and advertisers always face in our lives. This is a challenge that is not come out today. This is a challenge since the start of marketing and advertising. But what has happened today is that 20 years back, this was more of a one-way street. Consumers used to be, used to be advertising, consumers used to be taking over, buying the product, and one-way street, and consumers had to run from pillar to post if there was a problem. Today, this is a here and now situation. With the interactive media coming in with all the tools at our disposal, the consumer expects responses here and now. And that is how the whole paradigm has shifted. Today, the street is not one way. There was a saying by David Ogilvy which said the consumer is not a moron. She is your wife. I'm saying today that statement has really come true. She's with us all the time, the consumer, whether on our mobiles, whether on our laptops, we are traveling, sleeping, the consumer, if an irritant consumer or an irritated consumer can make your life hell. Well, I don't want to preempt my very eminent panelists, so I would hand over the mic to them to give their point of view. I think I've laid the foundation for these discussions.
Like that? Then no. Okay. I think I'll begin from what you just said, which is the consumer is not a moron, she's your wife. I think that statement is a bit of an oxymoron. Maybe some people will agree with the first and the second part together. But anyway, jokes apart, I think the evolution of the consumer is the most, while everybody in this room would like to believe that how marketing has evolved is the most amazing thing, but I think the most amazing thing is how the consumer has evolved and how the Indian consumer has evolved. I say this because I come from the beauty and personal care category. I was there for 6 years at L'Oreal running this brand as the head of marketing for the Body Shop. And one of the things that my APAC team used to say would be the smartest consumers in the world are Indian women. They really know what to buy, when to buy, how to buy, and they run the marketing. It is not us who run the marketing. And I think on that note, I possibly pass it on to my fellow panelists because it's a rich discussion that we can have.
Yeah, so rightly said. I think as human beings, we all feel that we are rational. However, as human beings, we are not rational, we are rationalizing. So more of the decisions what we take, we rationalize it in a way to suit us. And probably that is what is making it challenging for companies, for organizations to handle, the whims and fancies of the consumers. Now, while there will always be cases like that where, consumer are going to come up with their expectations, which many a times is not realistic, many a times is not feasible for the organizations to optimize and deliver. However, I would suggest the answer lies in the beautiful science of behavioral economics, which basically makes it very interesting to handle some of these irrational behaviors and thoughts of consumers. Let me give an example of one of the things which has happened in one of the countries outside India, where there was a complaint which has been given by the flyers for an airport that they have to stand for a very long time in a queue. Now that is something which was troubling the people there, the airport authorities, and they went to a behavioral scientist and they tried to understand that how do they solve the problem. And the way they solve the problem is they've actually made the baggage collection counter very far from the arrival gate. And as a result of that, while consumers do not get to stand long in the queue, but they get to travel from the arrival gate to a baggage collection counter for a long time. As a result of that, the complaints have gone down. So basically, it is, people are not really worried about, spending time. People are really worried about the uncertainty and the kind of agony which they have to face in terms of spending time. So the quality, it actually matters. How you're spending that quality. If you change that quality, then the solution is there. So I think companies need to look at some of the aspects of behavioral science to probably solve some of the hard things which customers ask for, and probably reach a good solution. Yeah.
First of all, good evening to everyone. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back home. I flew in last night and I was told it was brutally hot, so I've got some rain for everybody today, I believe. But taking on from what my colleagues here just spoke about, I think this whole concept of just an irate customer is fundamentally flawed in our opinion. We sell products across the developing world, across all of Africa, Asia, and even developed markets. And one of the things that I think is that it cuts both ways. It's given brands, marketeers, companies the opportunity to be much closer to their customer, to listen to the voice of the consumer. And with the good always comes the little bit of the bad and the ugly, which is you will get some customers who I wouldn't call any customer bad. I would call them slightly more difficult, slightly more discerning, slightly having higher expectations. And as companies, as brands, as marketeers, I think the challenge is upon us to be able to meet those expectations. Yes, you will have the oddball where somebody will whimsically create nuisance on social media or do something which is out of the ordinary despite having had the best of effort put in by the brand to satisfy them. But I think that's true for any space of life. You will always have some of these extraneous events or outliers, as I would call them. But I think there are very many advantages that have also come in terms of consumer experience and brands and marketers being able to get close to their consumers to understand how their product, service, or idea is doing. So I think it's more beneficial than harmful, in my opinion.
Thanks. I think my colleagues here have given you a perspective of what I would call a B2C consumer, right? Because you come from that domain. But let me share with you a very different experience. I must say it's a long experience. I've been in the profession of advertising. I head an advertising agency called BI Confluence. And let me share with you, our customers are all, in quotes, B2B, which means big companies are our clients. How to retain them? This is a question. I've started this agency about 28 years back. And believe me, I still have one or two clients who had given me the startup and continue with me. The secret is, how do you do that? You see, the customer here, I would mean the client in a B2B situation, their expectations are continuously changing. I think if we at our end, who are the service providers, are able to understand the changing needs of the customer, the brand, actually it's more than the client, it's the brand that we work for. If we understand the realities of the brand, the changing consumer perspectives and dynamics of the marketplace, then I think we are in a better position to advise ideas and strategies to our client. So it's a very different ball game. And of course, there are personal relationships. At the end of the day, in any business, whether it's a B2B or a B2C, it's a transactional, they are not your relatives, they are not your friends. But over a long period of time, you develop personal relationships. But everybody, when they tell me that so-and-so client is my friend, I tell him, my friend, he's your client because he has seen you serving and delivering on the trot for you. The moment you stop delivering, he will not be a friend anymore. He'll take away the business from you. So that's the other perspective, that you continuously have to rejuvenate yourself. You have to continuously reinvent yourself to meet the growing needs of the customer. I have seen this business from 1982 till date. And I've seen so many kinds of customers today. While we break up the customers into the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha and the Gen X and Gen Ys, I think one thing that runs common across, that the customers expect delight, customers expect high levels of satisfaction. So when people talk to me about the CRM division or the CRM unit of the client or the CRM unit of the digital agency, I always tell them it's not a CRM anymore. It's a CDM. It's a consumer delight management. You have to manage the delight of the consumer. If you don't do that, you fail in your job, because consumers are setting their benchmarks higher, their bar higher every day.
I think very rightly said. And in fact, I was going to bring that up, that customer satisfaction is no more a relevant thing, to be honest. The expectations are so high that customer delight is what one really has become a basic expectation. And exceeding expectations of the customers is a mandate that all of us are continuously running. I want to bring the discussion to a point where we say that in the entire experience, customer experience realm, or the the sphere of influence of this customer experience, there's a customer journey. The entire journey today, it has so many touch points, and the customer is so aware of each of these touch points and what is their experience at each of these touch points, that it is no more about delivering great satisfaction or delight at one point. It has now become a 360-degree thing. Whether it is a discovery or a search of a brand, and then being delighted by something, a review online, which even you may not have planted, you may not have put in there, to the point when the product is purchased. I'm talking D2C right now, or even post-purchase. So at every touch point, there is some impression that you're creating, and that is leaving a certain lasting impact on the customer's mind. And therefore, and why is it becoming so difficult to really ace customer experience or customer delight, is because all these touch points need to A, cohesively deliver great experience. B, it has to be consistent, with what you really stand for. The biggest problem today is that even if we deliver great experience across, it is very disjointed. Even the biggest brands are facing the same problem. I was at Lenskart, and one of the biggest challenges that we had was that the online presence of Lenskart, which is lenskart.com or Lenskart, the website, was a different experience. The store was a different experience, and it took us a while to really bring it together so that there is a cohesive Lenskart experience. On this, I also would like to say that the expectations have changed so drastically, and the advocates have changed so drastically. Yesterday, an advocate and I give you an example because you spoke about an era of the 82s and 90s, when a bar of soap like a Lux could be sold by any of the Bollywood stars. If a Hema Malini said that Lux is my beauty soap, everybody was willing to buy into that. Even a Shah Rukh Khan saying that, Lux is my beauty soap. I don't know if you remember that iconic ad where he's in the bathtub and all these women are surrounding him. And nobody even batted an eyelid to say that, okay, yeah, Shah Rukh use karta hoga bhai. Isne bola hai to karta hoga. Today, Deepika Padukone is trying to sell a beauty product, and I think she's facing severe challenges. This is the biggest Bollywood star of the country. So things have changed drastically. Your brand advocates are also not the same. So therefore, I bring forth, the challenges that face at every stage of the customer journey. You need to ace it, and you need to find advocates that are real, authentic, believable.
Thanks. So couple of points which we just discussed. One is about customer satisfaction, and the other is about customer journey. So customer satisfaction. So there are two schools of thought. The first school of thought basically says that whatever interaction you have, a brand has with a consumer, you have three levels of acing it. The first is you make it very simple for him to find the product and get it used. Then you guide him or her in a way in which how you can make it better, and if there is a way in which you can delight them. So there are three levels of customer satisfaction which can happen, which is one school of thought. There is another school of thought which is slightly recent, is there is nothing known as loyalty. Consumers are mostly polygamous loyal, which means consumers have a repertoire of brand which they use it interchangeably. Just take an example of any shampoo brand which you have or any toothpaste brand which you have. You typically would see that over a year, you would have used the same different brands over some period in time. And tomorrow, if somebody goes and asks you, can you please tell me what is the difference between a Pantene and a Sunsilk and why you have picked that up? Many a times you don't have a good enough reason to say that, this is the reason why I have picked this up and why I have not picked this up. And hence, while, the brands need to understand this, that most of the times consumers are not looking for that perfect product. Brands are like a mental shortcuts for them, which they would want to take to get done with a decision which they have, which they have to make in their whole life. And hence it is important that we focus a lot more on acquiring new consumers rather than spending lot more time in retaining them. Because all brands, whether the small brand or large brands, will lose consumers. It is only the large brands, if you gain consumers at a much faster rate than you are losing, is somebody who is going to have a better and higher market share. So these are some of the thoughts which is on this aspect.
Well, I think we are going in circles. So let me go back to the point that was made by the moderator initially about B2B. As a service provider, he's had a stellar run and runs a very well-regarded agency. If you think through, he's a service provider to a set of clients, and actually that's not the marketing piece, that's a delivery piece. The service is actually to the brand's customers. Yes, there is a complete diametric marketing and customer satisfaction paradigm for B2B. So if I were to talk about technology from where I come, if SAP was marketing to an enterprise customer, that marketing message and that customer sat would be diametrically different from typically a D2C or a B2C scenario where it would be an individual customer. So yes, there is that difference, and you need to have different yardsticks to measure those. And I think one of the common strains that's emerging from all the comments being made is about customer delight, and I think that's the bottom line. And with the advent of new age media, social media, ability to really mine your consumers' preferences, to understand their behavioral patterns, like my colleague has said, which toothpaste brand they use could be across 2 or 3 key brands, and they keep switching. And it's not even a conscious switch, it's just a subconscious switch that happens, and they may not be able to give you a real reason why as to that switch happened. So I think for marketers, the challenge from a customer sat standpoint is really listening to that voice of the consumer. And the only way to listen to the voice of the consumer is to get as close to them as possible and stay humble and stay hungry. Really understand how patterns are evolving, because one of the other things that's happening from a consumer standpoint is also disruption in terms of preferences of how consumers consume product. A consumer who's a Gen Z has very different consuming patterns for the same product vis-a-vis somebody who's slightly of an older age profile. Economic classification makes a difference. So I think listening to our consumers, consumer delight, are all some of the most important things that have emerged. And I think really as marketers, if we stay hungry, stay humble, stay close to what our consumers are telling us, I think that's the genesis from where we can start to peg and create that cohesive experience, as the Lenskart example showed, to really build upon delivering consumer delight.
Excellent. I think this discussion is covering all facets of consumer satisfaction to the delight platform. I would also, taking off from one of the panelists who mentioned about a polygamous relationship between brands and customers, which means a customer today is not happy. If we were started with Lux soap, we would probably use it for 2 years in our generation, 25, 30 years back. But today, everybody wants to experiment with a couple of brands. There is yet another dimension to it, which is very interesting dimension. That is what I call the rebel relationship, which means my son will never use, or will not use generally, never use is a bad word, but not use generally, a brand I would prefer. So if I am a Colgate user, he will probably go to a Sensodyne or some other. If my wife is a Lakme user, my daughter would probably go to Mamaearth or some other brands. So that is what I call, because that is her or his way of showing that I will not use the brands with which I have seen and grown up with. We handle a very large brand of noodles, instant noodles. It's not Maggi. It's a competitor to Maggi called YY. And what we found out was that every young person, if as you know, that all of us, not me, I am of a different generation, but all of us within their 40, 45s have actually grown up with a brand called Maggi Instant Noodles, which I launched about 30 years back. But that's another story from McCann's. But what I'm saying is that they have all grown up. But today, that person who's a 35-year-old or 30-year-old person who's grown up with the mother's brand, they say, no, I don't want Maggi, it's too bland. We did some research, some depth interviews. It's not about blandness. It's not about sameness. It's about my parents have given me this brand. I will not go for this. I would go for a newer, sexier brand that is little more masaledar, that is little more hep, that's the reason why Korean noodles have entered the Indian market in a big way. Korean noodles today are dominating the upper end of the instant noodles segment, because they say that, Korean pop, they all relate to it. Maggi is seen as a mother's or a parent's brand, which I have grown up with. Horlicks is seen as a parent's brand with which I have grown up with. They will shift to younger brands that they relate to, and they make their independent choices.
I think we clearly need to iterate or articulate what really is the expectation of a customer at this point of time. Because going back to our topic, which is customer experience, so while choices, etc., yes, they're determined by that experience, the repeat choice at least, but the first choice is led by many other factors, and a whole lot of them could be more central to the consumer than to the brand. So I'm taking a step back and going back to the customer experience gamut of things and saying, at this point of time, the other aspect which is really becoming important and maybe is helping a whole lot of marketing to be done is delivering on customer support or customer care or customer help, as we, whatever name we make, customer care, the name that is term that has been coined. We have a whole lot of technology helping us there, and therefore it should be allowing for a basic customer service, standard, whether it is regarding a query or a complaint, to be addressed quickly, comprehensively, conclusively, so that the customer does not really get pulled into a conversation which is about meeting basic expectations. So what I'm trying to say here is that delivering on customer support has become hygiene today. What in the past used to be great customer experience, okay, somebody called the customer care helpline of say a brand or any product-led brand, it would be so essential to be able to solve that complaint well. And if one would be able to ace that, the customer experience would be said to be great. But today that is table stakes. You're supposed to deliver on that aspect without fail, flawlessly. And as long as tech is able to help you there, you should be then free to deliver experiences which are way beyond these basic expectations. For example, a product is delivered damaged or a product is delivered late. You should be able to make up to the customer without saying that this is something exceptional I'm doing for the customer. And you should be actually delivering on an experience which is in the realm of, like they say, for a product, there are functional benefits, there are psychological benefits. You should be actually delivering on the outer, sphere of experience, which is whether a great interaction with, say, a customer staff of a staff, at the store, or just shopping on the website, or whatever experience that there may be. So that is something that marketers, at least of all lifestyle products, are faced with, that they need to continuously improve the experience of expectations, or exceed the expectations on every parameter that already is known to the customer, and deliver on certain expectations which you yourself create. I'll give you an example. In the eyewear industry, delivering on lenses, great lenses, which, you have great vision, that was the entire game. Lenskart, when it came in, it never ever spoke about lenses. It didn't say it improves or you get great vision, because it said that's a given. I mean, you're buying a pair of glasses, you're supposed to get great vision. What I deliver on is on a fashion quotient. Completely changing the codes of that category, saying that there are square shaped glasses, there are aviator glasses, there are round frames. So the conversation entirely shifted. Today, the consumer has started to think like that. The other thing that it did was, in the last 1.5 to 2 years, it also started the 2-day delivery. Now, no eyewear manufacturer of the country, eyewear brand of the country was doing that. And neither was the expectation of the customer. Whether you go to a local optician or you go to a brand, it is going to take you 5 to 6 days. And in fact, the belief was that if you hasten the process, maybe your glasses will be delivered, which will not be up to the mark. Lenskart started this as a service, saying that your glasses are going to be delivered in 24 to 48 hours without fail, no matter what glasses they are, how complicated they may be, whether they are progressive or they are something else. So I'm saying you can also define the parameters on which your customer is going to score you, and you can then exceed that. So you create a new parameter, you create a new attribute, you exceed it, and you completely come through to a customer as extremely customer centric.
I think rightly said. So I would start with the first statement with has been made, which was about being a rebel, and having choices which is very different than the parent choices, or the choices of earlier generation. Now, as organizations, of course, that is a challenge which every organization will face at some point or the other. The organization, the brand need to evolve with the audience, with their taste, so that you are able to satisfy their needs. So, quoted an example of Horlicks. So, MFD category is anyways very competitive, and and there are things like that where people say that Horlicks is something which has been used by my parents or my grandparents. I don't think it is relevant for me. Maybe something else is relevant, and which is in a different format. Now, of course, as an organization like a Unilever now would have thought about it, and probably what they would have been doing is also how I'm going to make current Horlicks relevant for these rebel or these newer kind of audiences by connecting with them in the way which they understand. Maybe they are might not be able to resonate with the kind of advertisement which they have, but they might resonate with an influencer who can talk about Horlicks in the language in which they understand, in the media format in which they consume. So right now, most of these youngsters, or Gen Zs is what we call, do not want to spend a lot of time on television. They have the television in their hand. They would want to spend more time there, and they would want to be in control. They would want to consume media as they want. Now, as an organization, it's not that they are not aware, because of course, an organization like a Unilever would be, understanding this thing very well, and as a result of that, they would be reaching it to them in their medium and trying to influence. So, as a result of that, organizations also evolve to reach out to these changing aspirations, needs, and requirement of the consumers. And if they're able to make that change, and as a result of that, probably they will still get on to the rebel guys in their portfolio. Some organizations who are not able to do it, they would find it very difficult to get the newer consumers on the brand, and as a result of that, they would face decline.
No, sorry, I have a related point here, and that's why I'm going to say this. And I have nothing against the larger organizations, but the pace at which things happen, the media choices that some of the larger organizations are making, they're still on television. How many of us watch television, tell me? I mean, or a Saas Bahu serial or an Anupama or whatever. They still happen to be the largest component of the media buy that you do for a campaign. And I do not understand why. If we are all agreeing to the fact that either we are watching connected TV, either we are watching content on our gadgets, personal gadgets, then why is it? And if this change is happening, the change seems to be rather slow. The pace seems to be rather slow. And which is why a whole lot of startups, I think, are able to turn it on its head.
Well, I think you're making a great point, and while we can take I think these are different market segments. At the top of the what I would call the top of the pyramid, yes, that audience is not consuming television. You're right. Even the younger or slightly older, let's say mid 40s or early empty nesters aren't watching it. In that group, for that matter, even on our personal smartphones or devices, there is a tremendous backlash for advertising that comes within our media consumption time, whether we are consuming whatever kind of media. But there is this wide swath of aspirational India, and I'm speaking for India, and I'm speaking for most developing markets, which is still consuming television. And marketeers are also looking at them as aspirational climbers. And that is why there is this space of television or print advertising even that carries on. I've heard marketeers talk about doing print not to achieve end consumer awareness or results, but more for optics and perception within the trade that they're doing this and they're visible there. So
then they're big enough.
So yeah,
do
so
that.
so there are different objectives that you're firing, and therefore, while this whole media consumption piece, especially in the affluent economic classifications, has really has totally turned on its head. But for the wide swaths of India, and we come from that affluent section, so we are prisoners to our own aspirations and usage scenarios as well. But in wide swaths of the developing world, and I see this today, I don't know how many of you work in Africa. We market product there, we sell product there. Amazing boom happening there. That's what, for that matter, I heard somebody mention a few days ago that Kenya is the next big country for Amazon because of mobile payments. Disruptive situation there. But wide swaths are still in the traditional medium. So yes, the writing's on the wall for the traditional mediums, but I think the epitaph is still to be written.
No, there has to be clever usage. That's all, I think. I'm not saying that's all dead.
Right. I think we have an interesting session going, but unfortunately the time is running out. But I'd just like to make a few observations very quickly so that we are not very far away from our allotted time. One is that startups in last 5-10 years have changed the rules of the game totally. I mean, look at biryani, which was a traditional food that we used to go to different restaurants to eat, is today served to your home within 1 hour or half an hour because of the people like Biryani by Kilo. And I know these two gentlemen who started this. This is a revolutionary concept of selling biryani on the web, on the internet. I mean, these are also, what is this finally doing? These are raising the consumer expectations. He doesn't need to travel out in this pollution, in this, congested roads. He can sit at home, enjoy his biryani warm, which comes with a handi and a little flame at the bottom. Whether that warms or not, that I don't know, but it does come with a little flame. So consumer expectations are also skyrocketing because the rules of the game are being changed by a lot of these startup companies, and that's good for all of us. That's interesting. It is keeping us marketeers and advertising agencies on our toes to ensure that there are so many dynamics that are working in the marketplace to make this whole market so much more exciting, so much more to learn from. I still feel that, after 40 years or 35 years of service, I still think that I have a lot to learn, and lot to learn about the consumer insights, about the consumers' growing aspirations, expectations, and I must say demands. So I am through with if any of you want to add, I think it had a good session. We can take a couple of questions if there are any. Otherwise.